finishes and factions catching action.
And welcome to this week's episode of Finishes and Factions does Friday Night Smackdown. And thank you to everybody that's come in to catch some action with me, Adam. Ordinarily, we would have myself and my normal co-host Rich. As I have said on the previous few episodes, my main man Rich is out with an illness at the moment. He will be returning to us hopefully very shortly, and we'll resume our normal format. For now, however, let us dive into the February 7th edition of Friday Night Smackdown, which comes to us from Memphis, Tennessee, out of the FedEx Forum Arena, easier for me to say. And I mean, Memphis is a huge wrestling city. Used to have its own, used to be the base of the Memphis Wrestling Territory, which I've not done the appropriate research to be able to state this without being completely sure of the facts that I am spouting forth. But I believe the Memphis Wrestling Territory was run by one Jerry the King Lawler. But we're going to dive in and see how far we get. So we started off this episode of SmackDown with a Royal Rumble recap. Pretty standard fare. I'm pretty sure they used the same VT that they did on Monday Night Raw. And then, similar to Monday Night Raw, we started off Friday Night SmackDown with an appearance, promo being cut in ring, but our action didn't start in ring. It started in the foyer of the FedEx Forum, where we saw WrestleMania main event Jey Uso coming in through the crowd to another, oh my days, another poplacious pop. And like Raw, the Memphis crowd chanting, "One more time!" And again, WWE being the company of the fans that it is, wasted no time in giving another round of yeet to Memphis. Now, main event Jey Uso was out after he'd finished his yeeting and his entrance. He'd come out to acknowledge all of the support that he'd got, not just from his family, his friends, the boys in the back, but also the fans as well. And he has come to SmackDown for one reason and one reason only, and that is to go face to face with Cody, the American Nightmare Rhodes. And he gives it, and considering that Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes are famous friends, he gives him a fantastic entrance, and we see Cody come out to the ring. Now, Cody and Jey start chatting about what would happen, or if we got sort of Cody versus Jey at Mania. I mean, if we got that match, who would we be chanting for? I mean, these are two of the most over superstars in the WWE today, and yeah, it's a case that I don't genuinely know who I'd be rooting for, because I am a Cody Rhodes fan. Haven't always been. When he was the dashing Cody Rhodes, yeah, no. But since he's come back from sort of AEW and made his grand return, I am a Cody Rhodes fan. But I'm also a Jey Uso fan. Who would you be chanting for that match realistically? I don't know, but I'd love to hear it from you guys. The The email address, as it always has been, is finishersandfactions@gmail.com. Drop us an email. Let me know in the eventuality that we get Jey Uso versus Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania in Las Vegas. Who are we chanting for? Who are we cheering for in that match, realistically? I'd love to take a poll on that and see who comes out where. But as Cody comes out, he hugs Jey in the ring, obviously giving him big props for winning the Men's Royal Rumble, something that Cody Rhodes has done twice consecutively, if I remember correctly. And they theorise about standing opposite one another as opponents or shoulder to shoulder as champions. What an image that would be. I mean, it's a case that, oh, yeah, so much to unpack with this promo, realistically. But Cody is obviously still banged up after his match. He's got fluid on his elbow. He's got a tilted pelvis and all the rest of it. It's just a case that that match with Kevin Owens at Royal Rumble was an absolute war, and he has his war wounds to heal before he can do anything else. But Cody is quite obviously beaming with pride for Jey, and they talk about their shared history when they were tag team champions, sharing libations on the bus before press conferences. Something that I am almost positive my co-host Rich would have absolutely adored to be talking about, as it's something that we bring up in conversation on a number of occasions and we reference to each other almost all the time. And yeah, I mean, Cody talked about if Jey sets his sights on the WWE Championship, their friendship might not survive it. It's a case that when two friends go to war over a championship, it changes the dynamic of how that friendship sort of continues on. Some friendships will survive it and others won't. And I think Cody is genuinely worried that if they go to war over that championship, it is a case that they may not come out on the other side as they went in. And then we are interrupted by Tama Tonga and Jacob Fatu. The cross-eyed half-wits, if I remember correctly, from our friend LA Knight. Yeah! And they come at... Fatu talks about how his family needs that WWE Championship back. And it's important to reference at this point that Jey Uso is Jacob Fatu's family. They are all part of the same Samoan dynasty. But Fatu is determined that Jey is not going to be the one that will bring the WWE Championship back to the family. And Jey doesn't need to hear anything more after that. He doesn't want to hear any more after that, as he delivers a super kick to Tama Tonga, and Cody goes after Jacob Fatu. I mean, Tonga isn't really the bigger threat here. It is most definitely Jacob Fatu. And it goes to show at the end of this promo, we've got Fatu being really cut down to size with a super kick and Cody cutter. And we are shortly treated after that as Nick Aldis wastes no time as Smackdown general manager, announcing the main event of tonight's card will be a tag team match. I mean, it's starting to sound like Teddy Long has come back in the form of Nick Aldis, because player, we're gonna have a tag team match. And it's Cody and Jey versus Tonga and Fatu. So that will be one hell of a match to look forward to later on in the evening. But first, our first Elimination Chamber Qualifier is a women's singles match which sees Piper Niven, who comes to the ring with the current women's US champion Chelsea Green, versus Bianca Belair, one half of the current women's tag team championship champions, who comes accompanied with the other half of the WWE World Tag Team Championships for the women, Naomi. Now, this match I didn't get a massive amount of notes for. I find sort of, as much as I want to really like Piper Niven, as she's from the UK, and really want to sort of encourage that homegrown talent, which we in years gone by have not seen a massive amount of in the WWE. I find Piper Niven to be sort of, she's either never really given a good opportunity to get going, or it's a case that she's sort of very one-dimensional in her wrestling. I mean, she's obviously talented enough to have made it to the upper echelons within professional wrestling, and I ain't gonna fight her because she'll flatten me. But it's a case that I'm just not a huge fan of watching Piper Niven wrestle, as what I've seen of what she's done so far, it just isn't inspiring to me. So I do find it really difficult. And Bianca Belair, I've always said I have a problem with the braid. I really do. It really bugs me. It really sort of it puts a bee in my bonnet. And yeah, it's a case that, neither one of these I'm a huge fan of, but can really get behind some of the work that they've put in. But Bianca Belair starts strong in the ring. Piper Niven makes a strong comeback outside of the ring. Belair hits a huge spear to Piper Niven, but ultimately Belair pulls off a huge KOD for a pinfall win over Piper Niven. And Bianca Belair becomes the second woman to qualify for an elimination in the Elimination Chamber match. Liv Morgan from Monday Night became the first, and yeah, we went from there to a GM office promo with Nick Aldis talking originally to Caden Carter and Katana Chance, a couple of female superstars who we haven't seen a lot of recently, and we don't see a lot of them here. They make an on-screen appearance and then bagger off, as Carmelo Hayes comes in as the ladies are leaving. Aldis mentions about being in touch with Adam Pearce from Raw, and they've been discussing a Raw superstar for Hayes to face, and Hayes just ain't happy about it. I mean, Hayes he's got a bit of a spotty record recently. He's had a couple of big matches. He had one last week on Smackdown versus Damian Priest, which he didn't come out on the winning end of, but had a really competitive match. And previously he's had matches with other superstars which he's not come out smelling of roses from. But this time a match is announced for Carmelo Hayes to face Akira Tozawa from Monday Night Raw, part of the Alpha Academy or the Alpha Babes or whatever it is that they're currently going by. Akira Tozawa, we may remember, was previously he was originally brought in, I believe, where he was chasing the 24/7 championship, which was one of good old man McMahon's final ideas that was taken apart pretty quickly by Hunter when he came into power, which was a championship which spent a majority of its time being held by R-Truth and being pursued by R-Truth, who was normally chased around by Akira Tozawa and a bunch of ninja, which was odd. It wasn't a fantastic it was more comic relief. It wasn't a serious championship, although in some cases it was shown as that. But the reason it was called the 24/7 is because it could be defended anywhere at any time as long as there was a ref in tow, and that was where the comedy factor came in. It was defended in all areas of an arena. There were times where the champion was hiding. Famously, R-Truth has been known to hide under the ring on top of tables and be revealed during matches that he's not even involved in, and things like that. But it was quickly scrapped because it lost its comic value very quickly and just wasn't worth carrying on with. But the reason that this match was hyped up to such a degree on Friday Night Smackdown is, as we will all remember, I'm sure everybody's had a chance to watch the Royal Rumble by now. If not, spoiler alert! It's a case that Akira Tozawa was due to enter the match at the Men's Royal Rumble match. He was on his way down to the ring. Carmelo Hayes, shortly before that, him entering, had been eliminated. He was making his way to the back. He was obviously upset, frustrated, and took all of that frustration out on Akira Tozawa with a back of the head shot. Akira Tozawa then lost his place in the Royal Rumble, being replaced by iShow Speed. And yeah, Akira's just not that happy. Understandably so. Hayes cost Akira Tozawa the potential of being able to go on and main event WrestleMania. Now, we know from our experience watching WWE television that it was incredibly unlikely that Akira Tozawa was ever going to make it to WrestleMania. It just wasn't going to happen. But he's costed the potential went away when Carmelo Hayes took him out. But Akira Tozawa versus Carmelo Hayes comes later in the card. We'll dive into that when it comes to it. We go from there to an in-ring promo by the reigning, defending tag team champions DIY, who basically come out to brag about their win from the Royal Rumble in their 2 out of 3 falls match with Motor City Machine Guns, which we covered in our Finishers and Factions Royal Rumble 2025 rest of the card episode, which is currently on all of our platforms so far. So please, if you didn't see it, go back. I did the coverage myself. I know what I've said, so I'm not going to revisit it too heavily. And basically, DIY come out pretty proud of themselves. Not sure why, but they're pretty proud of themselves. They're still champions, so that's something to say. And they're basically trying to initiate a minute's silence for Motor City Machine Guns' chances of a future tag team title shot against them going away. When they try and get everybody to fall silent for this, they are pretty swiftly interrupted by Pretty Deadly, who come out to interrupt to basically try and goad for their perceived entitled title shot. And DIY are more focused on the fact that they've just been dicks and interrupted the minute silence for Motor City Machine Guns. And Nick Aldis, after all of this exchange, is none too happy about DIY, the way DIY defended it. They're not happy about the DIY making demands for it, and comes out to announce a non-title tag team match between the pair, so between Pretty Deadly and DIY, and if Pretty Deadly win, they will get a shot at the tag team title belts that DIY defend so adamantly. And the other stipulation to this, now this is to bear in mind that DIY came out dressed for a promo. They didn't come out dressed for a match. They were still in their civvies. They were not dressed in their ring gear or anything along those lines. So Nick Aldis says that this match is actually for right now. And that brings us into match 2, which was a men's tag team non-title defense match with Pretty Deadly versus DIY. Pretty Deadly come in with this aggressive style they've been toting about for the last few weeks, and I'm not going to lie, I'm here for it. Go and get it, lads. As it stands, again, I believe Pretty Deadly are both British wrestlers, so they'll always get loads of support from us here, as much as we possibly can on Finishes and Factions. And but it's a case that we join the match in progress after an advert break, as we have to remember that while Raw is almost entirely upon Netflix now, SmackDown is still being shown by in the US under a cable affiliate, I believe. So we do get regular advert breaks. We join the match in progress, where DIY, as I said before, are in their civvies, they're in their street clothes, and DIY are trying every dirty trick in the book. They don't want Pretty Deadly to have this title shot, and it makes you wonder, why are Pretty Deadly so adamant about not being able to defending this title against a team like Pretty Deadly, who, for all that I've been able to see, are not that much of a threat. They're not traditionally sort of a team to go, oh, here comes Pretty Deadly, we better watch out. It's, oh, there's Pretty Deadly. Big whoop. Woo. So, yeah, I'm not really seeing what DIY are so very concerned about, but DIY try a stacked pin, holding onto the rope which was broken up. Pretty Deadly go into their own stacked pin, again, while holding onto the rope, but this time nobody interrupts this stacked pin. Pretty Deadly pick up the win and a future tag team championship opportunity for this match. Again, I didn't get many notes on it. I'm not... As much as I'm going to say that I like to support homegrown talent, I'm not a huge fan of Pretty Deadly, as you've probably gathered. So it gets really difficult for me to be able to sort of comment on what's going on and everything along those lines. It was a solid match, don't get me wrong, and I'm really enjoying the aggressive nature that Pretty Deadly are bringing to the table. Just not a huge fan of them as a pair. It just doesn't resonate with me, which I think we can all sort of appreciate at the very least. And then we go from that men's tag team match into a backstage promo between Andrade and The Miz. As I've pointed out previously, Andrade recently divorced from Charlotte Flair. I think more of a relief for him than for her, I would imagine. That he doesn't have to. Well, wake up looking at Charlotte Flair every morning, but that's yeah. I mean, the biggest loss to that is having Ric Flair as your father-in-law. But without knowing the detail around their divorce, I couldn't possibly say. Again, that is all born from my dislike of Charlotte Flair and all the rest of it. So, but The Miz still trying as best as The Miz ever can to make friends. It's just a shame he's such a colossal douche that he's incapable of. He seems incapable of making any friends, as he still seems to think that, despite the age difference between The Miz and Andrade, he still seems to think that there is a lot that Andrade could learn from The Miz. And Andrade just comes back to him and says, yeah, I did. I'd learned a lot from our match the last time we faced. I learned how to kick your ass. Which, you know what? We're not gonna deny here on Finishes and Factions, not one little bit. Andrade basically says that, yeah, I learned how to beat you. Mic drop, off you go, bye-bye. And we see Cody Rhodes walking from the back to be greeted by The Miz. I'm sure a highlight of his day. And Yeah, The Miz basically painting him out to be some older, wiser sage of a superstar, which I suppose to some degree he probably is. But yeah, The Miz basically saying, "Oh, I don't know what this new crop of kids is all on about. They don't seem to respect us as veterans or anything like that." Miz saying to the Cody, "Oh, you don't need to worry about the fact that none of these guys are going to have you back. I'll always have you back because we're old school." And Cody goes, "No, you're all right, thanks. I'd rather you didn't watch my back." And then Cody sort of starts showing signs of his affiliation with Karrion Kross when he was on Monday Night Raw, as he starts sowing some seeds of doubt in Cody and Jay's friendship, basically pointing out that he's not really, what's the word, that friendships don't really survive title bouts and things like that. I mean, none of the Miz's friendships, because they were never friendships, they were conveniences. But we also see Shinsuke Nakamura in the background of this promo. He seems to be hanging around a lot in the background of promos, and considering he's the current US title holder, I would expect him to be in the forefront. I'm not really sure where the creative is going for Shinsuke Nakamura and that US title, but I think they need to start bringing it more to the forefront. The women's US title is getting more airtime than the men's, and I'm not saying this in any sexist rant or anything like that, but they should at least be getting equal airtime to be able to move forward, and we're just not getting that at the moment. So I would like to see that in future. I'm sure a lot of us would, because it's a title that is very quickly being forgotten about, I feel. We're also treated to the Cena post-show interview recap, where he says, as we mentioned on the Monday Night Raw episode just gone, that he has basically inserted himself into the Elimination Chamber without having to fight an Elimination Chamber qualifier match, mostly because of filming discrepancies with his schedule. But it all comes down to, I've been here a long time. I've sustained multiple injuries and fought while hurt and blood, sweat and tears for this company. The least you can do is just let me in, basically, which they've done. And fair enough. He held the company in the palm of his hand. He held it up on its shoulders. He was there when other people left and came back, and he was there week in, week out, defending championships and defending the WWE's honour, going out, doing the press junkets and all the rest of it, and did really well. Now he's taking some time for himself to go and pursue a career after the WWE, and I do think he's owed at least that much. Now, speaking of the Elimination Chamber, we come to our first Elimination Chamber. No, it's not the first Elimination Chamber match qualifier. It's the second Elimination Chamber match qualifier, which was a men's triple threat match between Drew McIntyre, LA Knight, and Big Jim Uso. Now, Drew is the first to come out in this match. Now, this was straight off the back of the news that Drew McIntyre has recently been drafted in as a last-ditch action in the transfer window over to Friday Night Smackdown, where we will now see him for the foreseeable future. And he basically goes on a bit of a rant saying, I'm glad to be back on Friday nights. It's so much better here. Nick Aldis listens to me. Wow. Calling Raw a toxic work environment and all the rest of it. Still cashed his checks. He could have gone somewhere else. As you can tell, not really here for Drew McIntyre's crybaby attitude, and it would appear that Jimmy Uso shares my dislike of this sort of crybaby attitude as he compares him to a bit of an ex-girlfriend and says that, oh, it doesn't work for me, oh no. And Drew tries hitting back, being a bit petty, showing off this new, more positive attitude that Drew seems to have come to SmackDown with by getting Jimmy's name wrong, purposefully accidentally calling him Jay, and then tries to get under Jimmy's skin by saying how differently things could have been if only Jimmy had said yeet first. And I can sort of see where Drew's going with it. It's not outside the realms of possibility to sort of theorise that if Jimmy had said yeet first, would we be saying main event, WrestleMania main event, Jimmy Uso instead of Jay? But nothing stops Jimmy from saying yeet, as he proves in the ring almost immediately. It's like, yeah, I can say yeet, and gets a bit of a delayed response from the crowd, which is understandable because they weren't expecting him to go that far. So I can fully understand a late response from the crowd on that one. Jimmy sort of is really very unfazed by anything that Drew McIntyre has said. Laid out how proud he is of Jay and all of the obstacles that Drew would now have to overcome, starting with Big Jim Uso. And this is where we see the entrance of LA Knight. Now, LA Knight can cut one hell of a promo. He really can. And basically says, it comes out, immediately addresses Big Jim and just says, look, you've cost me title opportunities in the past. There's no love lost between us. We're not friends. But, and this is where LA Knight sort of goes on a bit of a bit, what almost seems at first like a bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? A bit of a tangent, bit of a side note. He goes on a bit of a side note and starts talking about the fact that he sends a message. And this isn't a message to anybody in the ring. This is a message to every man and boy watching in the arena, at home, listening to this podcast even. LA Knight has told us that it is okay to cry and it doesn't make you any less of a man. And for somebody like myself that suffers with their mental health sometimes, and yeah, I agree with everything that he says in this promo, because it is important that we realise that while society as a whole does not really sort of accept that men crying is an acceptable thing to do, that it is an emotional release, that we need to be able to break that stigma around it, as there is not enough said about men's mental health that in on big stages like this. So big props to LA Knight for talking about it and everything along those lines. It's important that we know as men that it is okay to have an emotional response. It is okay to cry. It's good for your mental health. It's whether you do it in private or anything like that, just don't feel like it makes you any less of a man to do. Having said that, LA Knight immediately brings this round and aims it directly at Drew McIntyre, almost sort of going back on what he says. To a degree, he doesn't diminish the message he's given, but he does say there is a limit. It's okay to cry without being a big old crybaby, and points it at, and this will be the new name that Drew goes by in my head for as long as I can remember, Drew McIntyre. Fucking love it. In fact, to the point that whenever I watch one of these shows, I handwrite all of my notes. And throughout majority of all of this, I think I changed his name throughout the entire thing to McIntyre, because that is how he's going to go now. So by this point, LA Knight is down in the ring. And yeah, I mean, this match starts off as you would expect it to. Big Jim, LA Knight ganging up on McIntyre to try and sort of take him out of the run-in. As soon as that team play sort of boils out, Big Jim comes out looking strong. Not going to lie, he comes out looking dominant against both LA Knight and McIntyre. And we've got the crowd chanting McIntyre as well, which again just cements this in my head all the more. LA Knight slamming Jim's and Drew's faces into that reinforced announce desk, which, I mean, even if it's not a reinforced announce desk, your nose bouncing off something nice and solid is gonna fucking hurt. But yeah, we progress later on in the match. McIntyre in the Tree of Woe in the corner. Jay sat on the top turnbuckle of that same corner. And Knight goes up top to deliver a superplex. And this was one thing, I'm going to switch up a little bit and say that Drew McIntyre really impressed me with this, as he uses a hell of a lot of core strength to go from a Tree of Woe position, sitting all the way up and being able to essentially powerbomb LA Knight down, which also brings down Jimmy Uso into sort of like a powerbomb superplex multi-move domino effect, which was one of the highlights of this match for me. It was just, yeah, the physical strength it takes to be able to sit up from a vertical position is untrue. I mean, I have trouble sitting up, getting out of bed in the morning, to be quite honest, but that might have more to do with mental health than anything else. Anywho, McIntyre starts looking dominant midpoint through the match, as we would sort of expect him to. He goes for a Claymore kick, which is sort of intercepted by Jimmy Uso with a super kick, which takes McIntyre out of the ring. Big Jim gets Knight down for a pin attempt, for the count to be interrupted by McIntyre pulling the ref from the ring, which quite honestly was a smart move on Drew's behalf, in my opinion. LA Knight with a near fall on Uso after a countered top rope dive was also a bit of a highlight. And Drew ends up picking up a pinfall win over LA Knight after a double Claymore interrupting a blunt force trauma attempt from LA Knight to Uso. And McIntyre takes the third spot in the men's Elimination Chamber match, joining John Cena and CM Punk in Toronto on March 1st. And yeah, I mean, what an absolute match that was. I mean, real contender for match of the night. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Is there anything that I missed? And we will do mop-up sessions and things like that for bits and pieces that you guys email in about. Once we've got our social medias up and running, we'll start doing sort of short form content, replying to these emails and giving shout outs to any and all of our listeners, which we would absolutely love to hear from you at finishersandfactions@gmail.com. Get your email in and we'll have a look, we'll have a listen, we'll go through from there, and yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Moving swiftly on from there, we go to a backstage promo where we see Byron Saxton interviewing Damian Priest, who has recently made appearances on Friday nights, where Priest is asked about his reaction to that last match. Priest starts talking almost like he's already in the chamber match, even though we know he has yet to fight a qualifying match to make his way in. I mean, Priest is good, but he's no John Cena, let's face it. And this is where we are interrupted by that one big SOB, Braun Strowman. And basically, Strowman strolls in to correct Priest and say, mate, you haven't qualified yet. And your match is next week, where you will face me as well as the Samoan werewolf Jacob Fatu in a triple threat Elimination Chamber qualifying match. And I'm here for that. That is going to be one hell of a brutal match to be able to look and find out what's going on with that. So we'll have to tune in next week to find out how that all goes. But moving on from there, we went to a VT recap of the aftermath attack from Kevin Owens to Sami Zayn from Monday night, and this is where we're also treated to an uploaded VT from Kevin Owens' car that he posted to X, basically shooting a bit of a promo explaining that he's showing his scars from his match with Cody. Theorizes that Cody may have been trying to end not only KO's career during that match, but realistically, I don't know what Kevin Owens was expecting after everything that had transpired between the two. Kevin Owens, obviously emotional, recounts how Sami Zayn just stood at ringside and did nothing to help in his match with Cody, but ran directly to Roman Reigns' aid in the Rumble match, which seemed to really hurt Kevin Owens' feelings. Kevin Owens calls Sami Zayn a bad friend, a disgusting human being, and vows to never forgive him. And we're confirmed at this point that Sami Zayn is out indefinitely due to that attack from Monday night, where he suffered a package pile driver from an already injured Kevin Owens. So it's acceptable to theorise that we will not see Sami Zayn before Elimination Chamber, and may well see him afterwards. We go on to match 4, which was a men's singles match. Akira Tozawa versus Carmelo Hayes, which we were told about earlier on in the evening. And Hayes has gotten into a bit of seems to have gotten into a little bit of a habit on his ring entrance to come out and sort of go on these conceited little rants that he likes to go on. Akira comes after Hayes before the bell even starts. He is pissed. And again, this comes down to Tozawa being denied an opportunity to even put his name forward for the main event of WrestleMania. Again, we know it would have never happened, but it's the loss of the opportunity for Tozawa that sort of really seems to stick in his bonnet a little bit, which I think we can all appreciate. We see Tozawa pull off some. Do you know what? I actually really enjoyed this outing from Tozawa. He proved to us that he's not just comic relief. He is actually able to go in a match, and it may be interesting to see in the future Tozawa maybe go on for a singles run, not just for a 24/7 title, but for an actual legitimate title. Even if it's a case that he goes back to NXT and goes and dominates in NXT, I'd love to see Akira Tozawa show off a little bit more of his repertoire, because there's more there to see, and it'd be lovely to see it. Now, we've come to the section of the podcast or the section of the episode where WWE give us a brief history of WWE in Memphis. This is the 16th Smackdown to take part in Memphis, Tennessee. There have been 3 PLEs that have been hosted in Memphis as well, and it is the home of Hall of Fame stars Jerry the King Lawler and Jimmy Hart, and Lawler himself is in attendance in Memphis. I'm a little bit disappointed that they couldn't talk Lawler into coming and doing some commentary, because my all-time favourite commentary duo will always be good old JR and Jerry the King Lawler. Those pair bounced off one another so well and were such a good team for so many years. They were the voice of Monday nights during the Attitude Era, and in my view there's just nobody that's ever going to be able to beat them. And that's no disrespect to any of the current commentators within WWE. It's just my opinion. It really is. And we go from that little bit of history over to a backstage promo where we see Akira Tozawa being helped to the back by the ref from his match, as well as Mr. R-Truth. R-Truth telling Tozawa to never give up, as his hero John Cena always says. But Truth drops him like a sack of shit as soon as he spots Jey Uso. Goes up to Jey Uso, congratulating him on winning the King of the Ring. We obviously know Truth is off in a separate dimension somewhere. He's not of this world, bless him. Jey corrects him and tells him that he won the Royal Rumble, and Truth responds with, "Oh, you won that too?" And Jey Uso basically says, "Dude, you dropped your mate. You dropped him on the floor. What are you doing with yourself?" And Truth just simply responds to Jey saying, "Oh, he just yeeted on himself," which, I mean, Truth is hilariously funny. I love that. And we see at the end of this promo, Cody Rhodes comes to find out about if Jey has made his main at WrestleMania decision, and we know that Jey Uso is remaining undecided at this point. And we go from there to an in-ring promo with the Women's Royal Rumble winner for 2025, Charlotte Flair. And the first thing that I thought when I saw her walk out into Memphis, Tennessee, was, what the fuck is that woman wearing or not wearing, or whatever the fuck was going on with that outfit? Because, my God, it looked awful. Absolutely awful. I mean, I'm sure on somebody else that may have looked like a really nice outfit. It just did not suit Charlotte Flair at all. And yeah. We saw, obviously, after Charlotte Flair's entrance, that Memphis, Tennessee is a bit split over Charlotte Flair. They're not sure they're not sure whether they hate her or whether they love her. But we see Charlotte Flair really sort of showing her true colours here, where she cuts quite an on-brand, conceited promo about herself. Genuinely asked the question, did you think after a 14, 15-month absence that she would do anything but win the Rumble? I said, well, did we think that she would do anything but? Probably not. Do we hope that she would do something different? Yes. And this is where Tiffany Stratton, our current SmackDown Women's Champion, comes out to confront Flair. Tiffany congratulating Flair, showing a lot of respect, saying how she sort of modelled herself after Charlotte Flair and all the rest of it. Manages to point out that everybody was so concerned after Flair left because she went out on injury, supposedly. And that everybody was concerned for about a day, which is about right. Realistically, this is where sort of Tiffany showed up. She started main eventing and got to the very tippy top or tiffy top of Friday Night SmackDown's women's division. Which, yeah, I mean, love her or hate her, you can't really deny her that she has done phenomenal work in such a short period of time. Despite that, Flair showing zero respect to Tiffany, really sort of belittling, bullying. It wasn't. I felt a bit uncomfortable for Tiffany at this point, because this wasn't just sort of rivalry banter. This was Flair really going after Tiffany. I felt like there was some real disdain there between the two. And Flair mentions on Monday night she compared Rhea Ripley to a kid. She went one step further and said, "Tiffy, you're basically a child." And Stratton, unfazed by it, credit to her, just wants to beat Flair to get out of her shadow. Speaking of shadows, or before that happens, we have Flair demand that if Tiffany really wants the match, she needs to get down on her hands and knees and beg Flair for it. And I'm sort of glad we didn't degrade to that point, because that might have been the end of me watching anything to do with Charlotte Flair in it, because that would have been a step too far in my view. But we were thankfully saved from that happening by Nia Jax and Candice LeRae coming down to the ring and announcing that Tiffany will be defending her women's title against Jax next week. So it's a case that all of this could be for naught, as Tiffany Stratton may not even be the women's champion by this time next week. We could have Nia Jax, in which case it could be Charlotte Flair facing Nia Jax at WrestleMania, which I wouldn't be against seeing, especially if Nia Jax is just going to flatten the bitch. Charlotte Flair announcing that she will be back next week to observe who wins that match, so that she can make an informed decision. So Charlotte Flair is really going to milk this decision for as much as it's worth, as we're not going to get an answer from her on Monday night or anything like that, although we were likely to see her on Monday night. Regardless, Alexa Bliss, one of the surprise re-emergences of the Women's Royal Rumble, comes out to her match, and we go from there. So we move on. The reason Alexa Bliss came out to the ring was that she was coming out for a match against Candice LeRae in an Elimination Chamber qualifying match. So this was match 5 on the card, and this was Alexa Bliss's first singles competition in 2 years. Now, I didn't realise she'd been gone that long. I mean, she was gone for all of the right reasons. She went off to start a family, and credit to her, considering she's had a kid, she looks phenomenal for it. I mean, Alexa Bliss is one of my favourite female competitors, and I'm so glad that she's back. And honestly, during this match, it didn't seem like she'd missed a beat. She was still didn't show any real signs of ring rust. There were a couple of moments where I thought, oh, do you know what? Actually, it's not going to be it's not going to be as cut and dry as I thought it could be. But I mean, having said that, LeRae came out with some fantastic maneuvers in this as well, with a big face buster off the apron to Alexa Bliss. And really started to push Bliss's buttons, which anybody that's watched Alexa Bliss wrestle in the past will know you do not push that woman's buttons. This woman was the right-hand woman of the late, great Bray Wyatt for a reason. You don't mess with this woman. But Bliss ends up picking up the win via pinfall, and this was followed by what looked like a Sister Abigail DDT. I'm not sure that WWE will refer to that out of obviously reverence to Bray Wyatt. I think they're just going to refer to it as an Abigail DDT rather than a Sister Abigail. But I think we're all sort of talking the same language here. So it's important to realise. But we go from that match. So that means that Alexa Bliss is now the third woman in the Elimination Chamber match in Toronto, joining Liv Morgan and Bianca Belair as well. So we've got 3 more slots to fill in the women's, 3 more slots to fill in the men's, and still a few more weeks before we are close enough to the Elimination Chamber to see that match take place, but already shaping up to be some phenomenal matches there. The backstage, we went from the Bliss match to a backstage promo with Byron Saxton interviewing Chelsea Green and Piper Niven. Byron points out that while Alexa Bliss has been successful in her Elimination Chamber qualifier, Piper Niven most certainly was not. But also announces that Chelsea Green has got an Elimination Chamber qualifying match next week versus Naomi. And we're then interrupted by Mishin and BFAB, who come to ensure that Green doesn't forget that Mishin is still chasing her title. And we're also reminded that Zelina Vega is currently searching for the title that she wants to focus on as well. As she comes out, takes one look at the belt around Chelsea Green's waist and says, yeah, do you know what? That'd fit me. I'd be all right with that. And yeah, I'm hoping we see Zelina Vega in some kind of title chase soon. I'd love to see that. We're then treated to a VT promo of the Street Profits. This has been circulated on social media as well, and basically saying that they are back. They are coming after the tag team titles in the most violent fashion they can possibly manage. And yeah, I mean, it's not difficult to find this this Street Profits promo if you want to go and find it. We're then treated to a backstage promo where the Motor City Machine Guns are allowed to react to that Street Profits promo. Basically, Motor City Machine Guns saying they ain't going anywhere. We're still here. We're still going for it. And there ain't nothing that nobody can do about it. This is when Los Garza come in to tell them to get over the loss. They've got bigger got bigger things to worry about, as Motor City Machine Guns are going to be facing Los Garza next week on Friday Night Smackdown. We then go into one more VT promo where it's basically promoting the Elimination Chamber qualifier match between Damian Priest, Braun Strowman, and Jacob Fatu for next week. And then we come to the main event match, the one that we've all been waiting for. This is a men's tag team match. Again, we're channeling Theodore Long. It's a tag team match, player, between Jey Uso and Cody Rhodes versus Tama Tonga and Jacob Fatu. And again, it's important to mention Cody Rhodes has already admitted to being pretty badly banged up after his match with Kevin Owens at the Royal Rumble. Having said that, Cody starts off the match against Tama Tonga. And Cody, still, despite being injured, behaving like the champion we all know and love, comes out and manhandles Tama Tonga. And it doesn't last long as Cody gets in trouble early doors. Rhodes ducks a running attack from Tonga, which sees him go careening into Fatu at one stage during this match. A massive Cody cutter to Fatu, but only earns a 1 count, which has seriously devalued that move from Cody in my opinion. And I'm hoping they feel like they've done that for all the right reasons, because otherwise we're not looking good here. Cody fails to secure a crossroads. Fatu drives Cody to their corner. Tonga tags himself in, and Fatu continues his attack, which Cody dodges, but Tonga sneaks in behind for 2 lots of 2 counts. That was again, we've seen Tonga and Fatu do this before, where they've actually behaved really in a very cerebral way to try and win the match, rather than just relying on pure brute force. And I think this is where Tama Tonga's influence comes in, because we've seen Jacob Fatu on his own. He doesn't behave in a cerebral way. It's a very visceral, very primal way. He just tries to overpower his opponents, which doesn't always work. At this point, Fatu has immobilized Jey Uso, or at least it appears that way. So Tonga and Fatu start to attempt to play the numbers game on Cody, for Fatu to be dragged from the ring by Uso, who sends Fatu flying over the announce desk with a super kick followed closely by a suicide dive from the ring. Cody treats Tonga to a crossroads and a 3 count. And this is where we see the big. Obviously, we have to leave everything on a a cliffhanger moving forward. But this is where we see a mysterious run-in after the match with Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso. And this mysterious run-in lays out Cody Rhodes in the middle of the ring. It turns out we have seen the return of one Solo Sikoa, who we previously haven't seen for a number of weeks since he last tried to come out, cut a promo, got booed out of the building, and seemingly took his toys and went home. And there's been lots of speculation around Solo Sikoa, whether he's going to continue on in the company or whether he's going to go elsewhere or give up wrestling altogether. I think we got our answer. Solo Sikoa is back, and he is gunning for Cody Rhodes, it would appear. And that was the end of Friday Night Smackdown. It also means that it's the end of Friday night of Finishers and Factions does Friday Night Smackdown. And this has been me, Adam, giving you as much insight as I can into the world of WWE's Friday Night Smackdown programming. And I hope that you've enjoyed listening to us. We're hoping by next week that we will have, or by the next episode, we will be back to our normal form, which is a 2-person discussion. But I hope you've enjoyed these episodes. If there's any feedback to be given, make sure to email us in on finishersandfactions@gmail.com, and I will get back to you. I will take all feedback on board. But thank you for catching some action with Finishers and Factions does Friday Night Smackdown. You will hear from us again after Monday Night Raw. Have a good one.